She'll never notice the missing money. That's what I heard. Soft laughter following, careless and cruel. They thought I couldn't hear. They thought I was old, fragile, and blind to betrayal. But they were wrong. That betrayal lit a fire in me I never thought I had. My name is Ruth Henderson, and I suppose I should start by saying I'm not a fool. I may be 74, my hair silvered, and my knees slower than they used to be, but my mind still catches everything. Before we go on, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Tell me down in the comments, because I know some of you out there have faced that same quiet kind of betrayal, the one that comes dressed as kindness. Now, let me take you back. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where the air smells of rain and old lilacs. My son Daniel and his wife Vanessa had come over for lunch. The house was warm, the chicken casserole in the oven, and the sound of my late husband's old clock ticking in the corner. I remember setting the table, humming to myself, grateful for company. Vanessa had always been charming, too charming perhaps. She had a way of smiling that didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniel adored her, though. He said she was modern, efficient, and practical. Those were his words. I preferred calculating. I was pouring iced tea when I heard it. Her voice, low but mocking, coming from the hallway. She'll never notice the missing money. She barely checks anything these days. I froze. My heart stumbled. There was a pause, then laughter. Daniel softer, uncertain, like he didn't want to agree but didn't want to argue either. I stood still behind the kitchen doorway, my hands trembling, condensation dripping from the glass. I could hear every word like a nail being driven in. "It's just a few hundred here and there," she said. "She doesn't even know how to use her bank app. Honestly, it's safer with us." They were talking about me, about my money, about the savings my husband and I had built over 40 years of teaching and fixing broken things and skipping vacations. When they walked back into the dining room, I pretended nothing happened. My smile felt like porcelain, brittle and hollow. "Dinner's ready," I said softly. Vanessa beamed, complimenting the casserole she hadn't helped make. Daniel avoided my eyes. We ate like everything was fine, but inside, something had shifted. That day, a seed of suspicion took root, and it would grow into something stronger than either of them expected. After lunch, Vanessa offered to handle the bills like she often did. "It's just easier, Mom," she said, waving her phone. "Everything's online now." She smiled sweetly, the same smile she probably used on bank clerks and delivery men. I nodded, pretending to be the grateful old lady she believed I was. When they left, I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty plates and folded napkins. My husband's photo sat by the mantel, that steady look in his eyes. He'd been gone 8 years now, but I could almost hear his voice. "Don't let anyone handle what you built, Ruth." I whispered back to him, "I think I already did." That night, I took out my old ledger, a habit from my teaching days. I started writing line by line what I remembered, deposits, withdrawals, bills. My handwriting shook, but my resolve didn't. Something wasn't right. A few missing entries, smaller deposits, small cash transfers I didn't remember making. I stared at the numbers until my vision blurred, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about control. They thought I was too old to notice, too kind to confront, too slow to fight back. But I wasn't done yet. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and sat in the dark for a long while, listening to the wind against the window. And in that quiet, I made myself a promise. I would find out exactly what they took, and I would take back everything they thought I'd lost. The next few weeks felt like living inside a polite performance. Vanessa called me Mom in that honey-dipped voice, dropping by with grocery bags and bright smiles. She'd pat my shoulder and say things like, "You just relax, I'll take care of everything." And I believed her, at least I wanted to. After my husband passed, I'd promised Daniel I wouldn't burden him. He'd insisted I move closer, so he and Vanessa found me a small house only a few streets away. I thought it meant closeness, but it turned out to be convenience. Every Sunday, she'd bring her iPad and open my online banking. "Just checking the utilities," she'd chirp. "These companies charge so many hidden fees." I didn't mind at first. The numbers looked fine and my pension arrived like clockwork. But slowly, small oddities crept in. $120 missing here, $80 there. When I asked, she laughed, brushing invisible lint from her blouse. "You must have withdrawn it for groceries, Mom. Don't you remember?" Her tone was so light, so confident that for a moment I doubted myself. I told myself it was age. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe I was becoming one of those confused old women people whisper about in waiting rooms. That thought terrified me more than the missing money. So I started writing things down again. Little notes on a pad by the phone. I logged every bill payment, every grocery trip, every check. Vanessa found the notebook once and smiled. "That's adorable," she said, "like balancing a checkbook in the 90s. I smiled back, though my hands clenched under the table. One afternoon, I overheard her in the garden talking on the phone. The window was cracked open for air. The smell of lemon polish drifted through. "Honestly," she was saying, "I should get a medal for dealing with her finances. Old people shouldn't manage money. It's basically a public service, what I'm doing." I felt something cold run down my spine. It wasn't what she said. It was the laughter that followed, bright and cruel, echoing against my rose bushes. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up rereading bank letters, cross-checking every line against my notebook. Numbers didn't lie. People did. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet, because I remembered my husband's voice again. "Don't start a war until you know the battlefield." So, I observed. Vanessa began visiting more often, always under the pretext of helping. She'd insist on using her own card for groceries and say I could reimburse her later. She even set up automatic bill payments, so you don't have to worry. The truth was, she was slowly moving my entire life into her hands. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. He worked long hours at the firm, came home tired, and trusted his wife completely. Whenever I hinted at my unease, he'd sigh. "Mom, Vanessa's just trying to make things easier for you. Please don't start imagining things." Imagining. That word stung. I nodded and let it drop, but inside, I was already starting to keep secrets of my own. A few days later, I noticed something new. A letter addressed to Vanessa Henderson from my bank, accidentally delivered to my mailbox. The envelope was thick, stamped "Account Update." My pulse raced. I didn't open it, but I knew what it meant. She'd linked herself deeper than I realized. I stared at the envelope for a long time, then slid it into my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not until I had proof. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. Silver hair pinned neatly, eyes tired but sharp. "You're not losing your mind," I whispered. "You're being tested." From that day on, I smiled when Vanessa smiled, nodded when she talked, even thanked her for her help. But behind that polite mask, I began planning. Because if she thought I was too old to notice, she'd soon learn. I might move slower these days, but I still know how to win a quiet war. It was a Tuesday morning when I decided to stop pretending. The sky outside was the color of pewter, heavy and still. I put on my navy coat, the one my husband used to say made me look like I meant business. And I took the bus downtown. I told no one. Not Daniel, not Vanessa. The bank was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries whispers of secrets. A young teller with kind eyes greeted me. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. How can I help you today?" I smiled, clutching my worn leather purse. "Oh, it's just a small question," I said. A little confusion about my statement. "I'd like to check a few things, if you don't mind." She nodded and typed something into her computer. The sound of keys clicking echoed like ticking clocks. After a few moments, her expression shifted. Just slightly, but I caught it. "It says here," she said gently, "that there are 2 names on your account. You and Mrs. Vanessa Henderson?" My stomach dropped. 2 names? I repeated, trying to keep my voice calm. Yes, ma'am. It looks like she was added a few months ago. She has full joint access. She's been handling transfers, setting up automatic payments, things like that. My throat went dry. Did I sign anything? The teller hesitated. I can't say for sure, but the system shows digital consent. Maybe online authorization? Digital consent. That meant someone clicked a box. Someone who wasn't me. I thanked her quietly and asked for a printed copy of my statements from the past year. She handed them over, stapled neatly, numbers lined up like a confession in ink. I stepped out into the cool air, the papers tucked under my arm, and I felt my hands tremble. Not from weakness, but from anger. When I got home, Vanessa's car was already in the driveway. She was inside, humming as she rearranged my kitchen drawers. "Oh, hi, Mom," she said brightly. "You were out early. Groceries." I smiled faintly. "Just a little errand." She kept chatting about dinner plans while I watched her move around my kitchen like it was hers. She had no idea I knew. Not yet. That evening, I called Daniel. "Sweetheart, I went to the bank today," I said. "They said Vanessa's name is on my account." There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Mom, please don't make this into something it's not. Vanessa's just trying to help. You're not great with online stuff, and it's easier for us to manage things together." His tone, that careful patience, like speaking to a child, burned worse than the betrayal. "Did you know she was moving my mail to her email?" I asked quietly. "It's just paperless billing," he said. "You're overthinking this." Overthinking. Another word that meant old, irrelevant, helpless. I hung up soon after, my voice steady but my heart cracking inside. That night, I went through every folder I owned. Old tax papers, handwritten notes, even the small envelopes I'd tucked away after my husband passed. My fingers shook as I sorted through them, the smell of dust and ink filling the room. That's when I remembered him. Mr. Garland, my husband's lawyer friend from the old neighborhood. A kind man, sharp as ever. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I found his number scribbled on an envelope marked House Deed, 2001. I called him. "Ruth?" His voice was warm, surprised. "It's been a long time." "It has," I said softly, "and I wish I were calling for better reasons. I think someone's been taking from me, quietly." He listened without interrupting. Then he said something that stayed with me. "Don't confront them yet. Bring me everything. We'll see what's been done, and we'll undo it." When I hung up, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The mask was off. The polite act was over. Vanessa had turned my trust into a trap. But she'd just made her first mistake. She underestimated the woman she was stealing from. Mr. Garland arrived 2 days later with a worn briefcase and that same steady look he'd had back when he helped my husband draft our will. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one Vanessa had mocked as old-fashioned. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he said. I slid the printed statements toward him. Page after page of numbers, dates, and tiny withdrawals. He adjusted his glasses, tracing a finger down each line. "Recurring transfers," he murmured. "Family expenses, household support, and, here, a savings account you didn't mention." "Because I didn't open it," I whispered. He leaned back, exhaling. "Ruth, this isn't sloppy bookkeeping. It's systematic." We added the amounts. $28,400, gone in under 2 years. My breath hitched. That was the emergency fund my husband and I had built after his diagnosis. Money meant for security, for peace. "Do you want to press charges?" Mr. Garland asked softly. "Not yet," I said. "I need to understand how deep it goes." He nodded. "Then we document everything, every transfer, every signature." While he photocopied the pages, I stared at the ledger of my life reduced to thefts hidden beneath polite smiles. That evening, after he left, I made tea and sat beneath the ticking clock. Each sip tasted of metal. I opened one envelope I hadn't shown him, a letter from the bank about new digital permissions. At the bottom, a shaky signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. The R was wrong, the loop too large. Vanessa had forged it. I pressed the paper flat, my hands trembling. Memories flooded in. The afternoon she'd asked for my laptop password to help with updates. The way she'd glanced at my checkbook and joked, "You still write these? How quaint." I'd laughed then. Foolish. The truth settled like a stone in my chest. Vanessa hadn't just taken money, she'd taken trust, the one thing age can't easily rebuild. I thought of Daniel, my sweet boy who once built me paper flower bouquets for Mother's Day. How did he become the man who looked away while his wife dismantled my life? The clock struck 10. I folded the forged letter carefully into a folder marked evidence and locked it in my desk. Then I opened my journal and began to write, not as a victim, but as a witness. They think I'm too kind to notice. They think grief dulled my sight. But I see them now, clearly. 2 weeks passed quietly. Vanessa continued her visits, chirping about recipes and budgeting tips. I listened, nodded, played the frail old widow she imagined. Then one morning, she asked casually, "Mom, mind if I move that extra pension deposit into the joint savings? It'll earn better interest." "Of course, dear," I said, smiling. "But remind me, which account is that again?" She hesitated, just for a second, and that flicker of unease told me everything. That night, I called Mr. Garland again. "It's confirmed," I said. "She forged the joint savings signature. I want to act." "We'll start by freezing the account," he replied, "and we'll make sure she can't touch another cent." When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back wasn't fragile. Her eyes were clear, sharp as frost. For months, Vanessa had built her little empire on my silence. But silence, I realized, is power, if you know when to break it. I turned off the lights, the folder under my arm, and whispered to the night, "Tomorrow, I take back what's mine." The next morning, the air felt different, crisp, charged. I brewed my coffee a little stronger, pulled my hair back, and called the bank's fraud department. The woman on the other end was polite but cautious. "We take these matters seriously, Mrs. Henderson," she said. "Can you confirm you didn't authorize any secondary access?" "I can confirm," I replied, my voice steady. "And I can also confirm the signature you have on file isn't mine." There was silence, then the soft clicking of keys. "Understood," she said finally. "We'll initiate an internal review and temporarily freeze the accounts for safety. You'll receive new credentials by tomorrow." I thanked her. Then I sat back and let the relief wash over me. For the first time in months, I felt the ground beneath my feet again. But I wasn't done. Mr. Garland and I opened a brand new account in a different bank, under my name only. My pension and remaining savings were transferred there quietly. Every automatic payment Vanessa had set up was canceled. I changed my email, my phone number, and even my signature authorization. Still, I left one small account untouched, the same one Vanessa always used for her household transfers. I left a few $100s in it, enough to bait her, and then I waited. 3 days later, Daniel and Vanessa came by for dinner. She was chipper, all smiles, setting the table like a queen arranging her court. "Mom, I was thinking we should increase your utilities payment a little," she said lightly. "The bills are higher this season." "That's very thoughtful," I said, folding my napkin neatly. "Whatever you think is best." She smiled, satisfied, and pulled out her phone, no doubt logging into what she still believed was her personal ATM. Her fingers hesitated midair. I watched her expression shift, confusion flickering into panic. She tapped again, harder this time, then again. "Is something wrong, dear?" I asked. It's saying the account's restricted," she stammered. "There must be some glitch." "Oh?" I tilted my head. Technology these days, always full of surprises. Daniel looked up from his plate. "I'll check later," he said. "Probably just an update." I smiled, but inside, I could feel my heartbeat thundering in my chest, a mix of triumph and sorrow. That night, after they left, I checked my test account. As expected, there had been an attempted withdrawal, small but enough to trigger a record in the bank's system. Evidence. The next morning, Mr. Garland called. The bank's review confirmed everything, he said. Unauthorized access, forged signature, even email rerouting. They've revoked all third-party privileges. It's done. I didn't reply right away. I looked out my window instead, watching the autumn leaves scatter across the yard. It was strange. Victory didn't feel loud. It felt quiet, like peace returning after a storm. That weekend, Vanessa called. "Mom, did you change the bank info?" Her voice was sharp, stripped of its usual sweetness. "I did," I said simply. "Why?" "Because it's mine." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. I could picture her pacing, her perfect composure cracking. I imagined her realizing the little empire she built on deceit had collapsed overnight. When she finally spoke, her tone was venomous. "You're being paranoid. Daniel will hear about this." "Good," I said softly. "He should." I hung up before she could say another word. Then I sat down, folded my hands, and let the quiet fill the room again. They thought age meant weakness. They mistook patience for ignorance. But patience is what wins wars. And I had just begun mine. It was a gray Saturday when the storm finally broke. Vanessa and Daniel arrived unannounced. No smile this time, no fake charm. Their faces were tight, their voices sharp before they even crossed the threshold. "What did you do to the accounts?" Daniel demanded. "The mortgage payment bounced," Vanessa added, her tone brittle. "Our cards were declined at dinner last night." I set my teacup down carefully, the clink echoing through the quiet room. "Sit down," I said softly. Vanessa didn't. She hovered near the doorway like a cat ready to strike. "You've created a mess, Ruth," she hissed. "The bank froze everything. You could have called us before doing something so irrational." "Irrational," I repeated, tasting the word. "Is that what you call protecting myself?" Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, this isn't like you. Vanessa's been helping you for years. Why would you just—" I reached for the folder beside me and slid it across the table. "Because she forged my signature." Vanessa froze. "That's ridiculous," she stammered. "You're confused. That's not—" "Don't," I said quietly, meeting her eyes. "Don't lie to me in my own house." I opened the folder, one page at a time. The bank's fraud report, the copy of the forged signature, the unauthorized transfers highlighted in yellow. I had organized it like a teacher presenting evidence to a student who thought she could cheat and never get caught. Daniel's face drained of color as he scanned the papers. "Vanessa, what is this?" "They're twisting it," she cried. "It's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that cost me $28,000, I said calmly. "A misunderstanding that used my dead husband's name to open fake accounts. A misunderstanding that moved my pension behind my back." Vanessa's jaw tightened, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. "You don't understand, Ruth," she said, her voice trembling. "We were just borrowing. Daniel lost some work hours and we were short on bills. I meant to replace it. By calling me senile behind my back, by laughing about the missing money you said I'd never notice." The words hit like stones. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Daniel stood there, torn between us, his wife in tears, his mother unflinching. "You knew," I said to him softly, "didn't you?" He looked down. His silence said everything. "I didn't think it was that bad," he murmured. "She said it was temporary." The sound that escaped me wasn't a cry. It was something smaller, heavier, the quiet sound of a heart hardening. I gathered the papers back into the folder, stood and said simply, "You both need to leave." Vanessa's head snapped up. "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, "because this house, this account, this life, they're mine, not yours." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, please." "I raised you to be honest. I said, my voice breaking. Not to stand by while someone steals from me. You both crossed a line I can't uncross. They hesitated, then turned to go. At the door, Vanessa spun around. "You'll regret this, Ruth," she spat. "You'll die alone." I smiled faintly. I'd rather die alone than live surrounded by thieves. When the door slammed shut, the silence that followed felt like freedom. I sat back down, the tea now cold, and stared at the old family portrait on the mantel. Daniel as a child grinning between his father and me. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Because that was the moment I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd shed a lie. They had taken my money, my trust, and nearly my dignity. But in trying to strip me of everything, they gave me something back. Myself. The reckoning was over. The rebuilding would begin. The morning after they left, the house was still. The silence felt different now. Not heavy with tension, but calm, honest. I stood at the window, watching the sunlight spill across the yard where Daniel used to play as a boy. I thought of his laughter, of scraped knees and bedtime stories, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't cry. Because grief wasn't the only thing I felt that morning. There was something new, something I hadn't tasted in years. Freedom. In the days that followed, the phone rang often. Sometimes it was Daniel, sometimes Vanessa. I let the calls go unanswered. Eventually, they stopped trying. Mr. Garland handled the rest. The bank finalized its investigation, and Vanessa's name was permanently removed from every document. She was blacklisted from the account for fraud. I didn't press criminal charges, not out of mercy, but because I didn't need to. Their punishment was silence. Their consequence was losing the woman who once trusted them without question. I met with Mr. Garland one last time in his office, the walls lined with law books and the faint smell of old leather. He smiled as I signed the final papers. "You've handled this with more grace than most people could," he said. "Grace comes easier when you've already walked through fire," I replied. He chuckled softly. "What will you do now?" I thought about it for a moment. "Live," I said simply. "On my terms this time." When I returned home that evening, I opened every window, let the air move through freely, carrying away the stale scent of worry and betrayal. I baked an apple pie, something I hadn't done since my husband passed, and sat at the table with a single slice, savoring it slowly. It tasted like peace. Over the following weeks, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I reconnected with my old book club, began volunteering at the library, and even started teaching neighborhood children how to read cursive. A dying art, they say. But to me, it's a reminder that the old ways still have strength. Some neighbors asked where Daniel and Vanessa had gone. "Oh, they moved on," I'd say, smiling faintly, and so did I. I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. Bitterness traps you in the same cage the betrayal built. I had no interest in staying there. One evening, while organizing old photographs, I came across a picture of Daniel as a baby. His tiny hand clutched around my finger. My heart softened. "I hope you find your way back, son," I whispered, "but you'll have to do it with clean hands." I didn't hate him. I pitied him. For forgetting that integrity is worth more than money, and that once trust is broken, no sum can buy it back. As the months passed, the seasons turned. My garden bloomed again. Roses, marigolds, even the stubborn tulips that never used to take. I tended to them like I tended to myself, patiently, gently, with faith that roots heal even when branches break. One afternoon, I received a letter from the bank, addressed to Ms. Ruth Henderson, just my name, no joint account, no secondary access, just me. I smiled, tracing my fingers over the ink. It was the simplest proof that I had taken back what was mine. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch. The air smelled of rain and earth. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the hurt, the loss, and realized something powerful. They had tried to make me small, but in surviving them, I had become larger than I ever was before. They thought age made me weak, I murmured, but wisdom, that's something they'll never understand. I looked at the horizon and smiled, not the polite practice smile Vanessa used to wear, but a real one, soft, proud, earned. And that, I said aloud to the quiet evening, was the day I took back my life and my power.